Now, turning our attention to what has happened in Parliament. Democracy, of course, can be extremely chaotic. But the Indian parliamentary democracy has taken an unprecedented turn in the run-up to the 2024 general elections. 78 MPs. And these MPs, they included from both the Houses of Parliament, both the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. 78 MPs have been suspended today, and they have been suspended allegedly for creating a ruckus in Parliament. 14 MPs were suspended last week. The opposition MPs demanding a statement from the Home Minister Amit Shah on the parliamentary security breach that took place last week. The Congress, on its part, has accused the government of TANASHAHI. The question is quite simple. Who's at fault for the deadlock that we're seeing in Parliament? Is it an opposition strategy to make the government look bad? Or is the government running away from answering tough questions, especially when it comes to this parliamentary breach of security? Or is it just a political game ahead of the 2024 general elections? We got in a few political reactions earlier today. Listen to what we got.
Members in deep pain. Right from the start of today's proceedings, some honorable members had disrupted the House by shouting slogans, even entered the well of the House. The House had to be adjourned twice. Thereby the agenda by the House could not be taken up. Honorable members may appreciate that 0-hour submissions and question hour belong to them to raise matters of public importance and hold government accountable. Despite my repeated requests, some honorable members continued their act of willful defiance of the directives of the chair and violation of the rules of House due to their ignoble and grossly disorderly conduct.
Only for one purpose, to suppress the entire voice of the opposition and to suspend maximum people, those who are raising the issues of the people and the security. This is the thing is happening. Because this type of the parliament is, actually our impression is that parliament is for discussion and debate. But now the parliament is for suspension of opposition members.
Parliament is for discussion and debate. The winter session of Parliament, yes, there has been a lot of ruckus, but we've seen an unprecedented event as well, which is a breach of security. So is the opposition wrong in asking the government for a statement about this breach of security? And that is quite the moot point. Now we're getting more and more suspensions, and today we've seen an additional number. And that really calls for this discussion. Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court, Sanjay Hegde, is joining us. Mr. Hegde, good to have you with us on this edition of India Tonight. Up first, let me ask you if you have seen a precedent to the kind of suspensions of members of parliament that we are seeing today. They've been suspended in droves, and this for creating a ruckus in parliament and asking for some sort of accountability from the government, a statement from the Home Minister about the breach of security.
Well, this is unprecedented. Parliamentarians have never been suspended in this bigger fashion. And it's not as if when there's been a breach of security, the Home Minister has not hitherto made a statement. You see, when Parliament was attacked by armed gunmen during the Vajpayee regime, the Home Minister was Mr. Al-Khatwani. He made a statement in Parliament. I do not see why the nation cannot be informed through the Home Minister in Parliament as to what exactly happened, what were the security measures that got breached, and what they propose to do next. Now, the entire democratic system works on parliamentary accountability. If nobody comes forward to be accountable to Parliament, and that's especially the Council of Ministers, and if you decide to go roughshod in Parliament, eliminate all opposition, suspend all opposition, then I think the nation might very well ask, do we need a Parliament? Because if you are not...
But Mr. Hegde, often the nation also asks, why is their business not getting conducted in various sessions of Parliament? Those have been the kind of... that's the kind of refrain that we've heard a long time as well, when parliamentary procedures would get hampered by a lot of ruckus that was created Obviously, there were lots of political forces that were at work why business could not be conducted. Now, with the kind of numbers that the current dispensation has at its disposal, do you think that they are trying to stall the opposition's moves from getting business getting done in the House?
Well, numbers are not everything in a democracy, right? You cannot run a democracy without an opposition. In fact, in British Parliament, it is His Majesty's most loyal opposition. So those are the traditions that we come from. Here in India, we had the late Mr. Arun Jaitley once saying that disruption is part of parliamentary technique. During the 2G times, an entire session of parliament was not allowed to function. It is incumbent on a government with big numbers to also take into account the fact that the opposition also represents the people of the country. You can very well just say, okay, we suspend everyone and we just say we pass this bill, we pass that bill, we pass that bill. But those bills are important for the country as a whole. I can see that on the agenda tomorrow is the entire redoing of criminal law. There are good parliamentarians. I do hope that there is discussion. But if you keep just suspending everyone and then passing bills in silence, it is the silence of the graveyard. That is not the discussion that these people were elected to do.
If that is the case, Mr. Hegde, tell us about the legal position on this. As far as discussion and debate, it's expected in a democracy, like you're saying, it's expected in Parliament. But what does the law, the constitutional law, say about this? If the opposition has to get their suspensions revoked, the MPs that have been suspended, what are the tools in law that would help them do so?
Well, quite frankly, courts have a hands-off approach as far as Parliament is concerned. And this has been much before India became free. The old British law was that courts would not interfere in Parliament. But we have a bit of a hybrid system, especially after the 10th schedule, that is the Anti-Defection Act. Because then the Speaker became a tribunal. His verdicts were second-guessed by the courts. And now we have a kind of limited scope in which the courts operate. But nevertheless, courts are not the answer. By the time court procedures are over, and the government knows it well, as does the opposition, this particular parliament will have finished its tenure. Maybe you can get a declaration of some sort that these suspensions were illegal or unconstitutional, but to what use? It does not behove any government to totally shut out the opposition if you want to claim that we are the mother of democracy.
What is your sense?
In the late 80s,
Sure.
if memory serves me right,
Yes.
Rajiv Gandhi had a 400 plus majority.
Yes.
Yet after Bofors erupted and the parliamentarians of that day took it out, then many of them actually walked out in parliament and you had an opposition-free parliament that did not give legitimacy to what the government of that day did. Today also, if you have an opposition-free government, parliament, by suspending everyone, there is a little doubt about the kind of legitimacy that all these parliamentary procedures will be undergoing.
I think the government is using, perhaps for the lack of other words, brute force of numbers to do this, to go ahead with suspensions.
Yes. Now, it's not a numbers game alone. See, a parliamentary system based on the first past the post system in elections means that somebody who's got 41% may yet have more than 60 or 70% of the seats, whereas somebody who's got 49% may not have that. We operate on a system of checks and balances under the Constitution and in Parliament. If there is nobody to whom you will be accountable, then the system itself gets skewed. To quote Shakespeare, it may be, it is wondrous to have a giant's power, but it is tyrannous to use it as such.
Only comes at the time of elections, Mr. Hegde. Is that what you're indicating now?
Well, elections is when the people of India get to vote, and they will no doubt make their decisions known as to what has happened in this particular parliament and take their voting decisions accordingly. Yes, because of elections being round the corner, tension between the two sides is heightened, and it is precisely at such moments that statesmanship of a very high order is called for from the treasury benches as well as the presiding officers. You can very well say, okay, off with you, do your worst, but that is not how a parliament ought to function.
Mr. Sanjay Hegde, we appreciate you joining us and sharing your views candidly about this ongoing situation that we have in Parliament with as many as 92 suspensions now of members of Parliament, and they have been allegedly suspended because of creating a ruckus in Parliament. They have been asking the government to explain the breach of security that took place in Parliament, a serious issue no doubt, and the government has responded with suspensions of members of Parliament who have raised their voice against it. We'll keep tracking this story. Now, the big exclusive that